guys have to be there.
1 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
It's 2 o'clock.
Thank you.
I just have to get a
Oh,
pen.
my car is still set for the old time.
You didn't change.
All right, so I call the meeting to order,
2023.
and let's take care of business first. Has everybody had a chance to look at minutes? Any comments? Motion to approve?
I can make that motion.
Yeah, everybody good on that? Okay, so minutes approved. And we got water level and fertilizer reversed from our usual order. Let's do the water level report, number 4 on the, we've opened, we've done minutes, so let's do number 4 and then come to number 3 after that. So maybe Greg, you want to do those basics?
You do the water level, right?
Water level, yeah.
Yeah,
We're gonna go to
water.
I'm gonna just do our traditional.
The big 4 wells are, like 90th percentile. If we had rain like we had in January, we'd liable to have we might have flooded the middle of the island. Let me just turn this off.
Yeah, Ken gave us, Ken, you want to just mention?
Yeah, I don't know, do you want to continue with that? I'll give you.
The interesting thing, I think, is that, we've talked about what happens when the wells, improve, how do they react? If you go into section 4, which is the change in in height from the previous reading. So there was, this reading, I think, was February 28 or something like that. And compared to January, the end of January, you could see the big 4 wells are the only ones that increased. They were still capturing and still allowing, I guess this is my conjecture anyway, is that they were continuing, the water was continuing to percolate from the heavy rainfall that we had had. And the other shallower wells have actually lost, height in this time period.
I had picked that up. What's the difference between section 3 and section 4?
Section 3 is the level of water compared to the annual for this month. In other words, this is the water levels compared to all the water levels data that we have for February.
Right, okay, so the change from prior reading is actually the same data repeated.
Yeah, so, well, it's not the same data. If you look at the data there, that's saying that all of the wells are well above their median value.
All right, I do see that.
All right, and the second section, which is section 4, just takes a look at what was last month
Right.
to what was this month.
Right, no,
How did things change?
I'm just pulling out the thing that I mentioned in email, which was the change from the previous month, which you have in both charts. And that's the interesting one. That's the one which essentially you were pointing out that we're losing water out near shore in all those all the shallow wells.
Yes, that huge amount of water that they received in January and in December has now started to percolate out into the sound.
Basically, silver
Right,
beaches.
so we're still recharging, and yet near shore, we're starting to lose.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's what those red numbers show.
Compared to the previous month, however, it's not a bad situation in terms of the water level that we have now.
Right.
So, that's the NERD report.
And then your report is
Still
similar.
incredibly bullish on the rainfall that we've had. Basically, March to 3/18, we have 4.79 inches, which is, really incredible. We're only halfway through the month, which gives us a year-to-date number of 14.86 inches, which is about as good as we've ever had at this time of the year for the last 5 years. So we're in great shape from the standpoint of the amount of precipitation that we've had.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the last 5 years.
Yeah, that's the ones I've tracked.
But the last 3 or 4 years, it seems to me it's interesting for us to note that the last 3 or 4 years have been a departure from the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's been relatively low.
We've had an increased rainfall for 20, 25 years now, slowly increasing rainfall given just the general trends in the climate. But in the last 5 years, it's not as optimistic as
Not
that.
as bullish, is that right?
So things can really change on us without our control at all.
But we are out of control. Basically,
Yeah.
not up to us.
It's not up to us what rain falls. Yeah, but it's just, I made a comment in email to all of you that like, make hay when the sun shines or when the rain falls,
Keep as much.
Capture it. Yeah. There's a lot we can do with the wind on the wind at our backs. Okay, so anything about rainfall, well levels that anybody wants to still focus on? Okay, so now let's move to the fertilizer topic. So Lisa,
Right, not much has moved since we last spoke. Tomorrow, I'm going to be at a town work session, because the language that was proposed that Stephen Kylie had drafted, I guess there's still some questions about it. So I'll be going to the town board and talking about that tomorrow. I was hoping we'd be done by now.
right,
But we're not.
well, there's two parts to what you're trying to accomplish, I think. One being the brochure.
Right, so we want to hold off on the brochure until we know that this code is going to be actually in the town code, until the language is in the town code. That way we have more teeth when the brochure goes out, and we can direct people to the section in the code.
Right.
We can direct people to eventually links to other parts of the brochure. Like, for example, well, I don't have it in front of me right now, so I don't want to give wrong information. But we're still waiting. As soon as, I think tomorrow we'll know a little bit more about what's happening with the legislation. And then as soon as that happens, Tim said that he's ready to go on the brochure.
Wait, and so tomorrow's meeting is with whom?
Town board at the work.
Work session,
At the work section.
yeah.
Okay. Because we put a point on, people reacted last month here in this group.
Right.
And,
Were there any comments from the building department on the?
Karen Reed, you were going to talk to maybe.
He was away last week doing training,
Okay.
so I'll catch it today.
I mean, yeah, I sent it to him quite a while ago, and I hadn't heard anything since. So hopefully we'll have something tomorrow.
Right. Well,
What's the time frame in getting the legislation? I guess you would need a
Good to set a public hearing.
public hearing and all that stuff. So if even there, what time frame is that the public hearing? How long will it take?
Well, I mean, you set the hearing, so probably April, May, right?
Well, that's another
Yes.
wrinkle in
We
the.
were hoping that we would have it out by the time the
So we're
moratorium
gonna
was
set the
over.
public hearing on April 15th.
Yeah.
So then we have the public hearing on May 6th, and we might be able to approve it, depending on how the hearing goes.
right. But I guess I would like to get ahead of the curve here a little bit because there are specific things that came up last time as to why you might get hung up at a board meeting, why people might have some concerns. And I don't know if it helps or hurts for us to be, discussing the concerns. I kind of feel like it helps for us to.
Sure.
It's good to discuss the concerns now, because if we can kind of fix them and resolve them in the
Yeah.
legislation before it goes to a public hearing, then there's less chance of it getting kicked back to review again and then
There's another
set
month.
for another public hearing for
Right.
new legislation. So, yeah, the more you can.
All right, so Andrew, okay, I'm glad you have your hand up.
So when we met a month ago, February 2, I asked how comfortable we were about and the practicality of requiring a written permission from the building department anytime anybody wanted to apply fertilizer.
Well, let's be even more specific. I have it in front of me. I don't know if we have it available to us, but more specifically, the idea was that that testing would be required of the homeowner or his or her landscaper or a home test. I'm not sure how the test actually would work, but that would then be potentially given to the building department for some sort of sign off, at least you tested, you took a look at, do you really need fertilizer? That was the concept.
So, and my question was, is that the way that other towns are dealing with this issue? Or
No,
are there other remedies? And if so, what are they?
Well, Lisa was starting to answer you.
no, all of the, not all. The samples that we looked at in our subcommittee, there was nothing, to my knowledge, and I looked them over, referring to having any kind of corroboration or permit from a building department or any other department. That was not present. And I personally would like to remove that from the proposed language. I don't think, I agree with you, I don't think it's necessary for that type of oversight. And it puts a tremendous onus on the building department, and I was hoping we could hear back from Reed so we could get his spin on how that, how would you even be able to do that?
But even the lack of a response says something
Well, yes,
about the workload.
that's
I
exactly.
don't know. I can't tell you why, but I'm just saying.
That was not in the original proposal that we sent
But it,
to the town attorney.
but it is in the
That's
draft.
what was
It is
drafted
in the
and
draft,
passed
yes.
around.
So the town attorney put that in. Okay, is the town attorney an expert with regard to fertilizer application?
No, but I believe he looked at Lake George fertilizer permission,
Lake George, New York?
New York,
Okay,
and he took some of the language from there. Without him present, I can't answer that question.
okay,
All right,
so,
I'm not sure where Stephen got that from.
so I think I think our relevance in this is to make a judgment about the policy. And so that to me, like, what problem are we trying to solve? How have other people tried to solve it? And is this the particular remedy that we favor? I would think we as a committee
Uh-huh.
need to have taken a view on that. And before we get it into a public hearing situation, because who's ever conducting the public hearing would be able to say, this went before the Water Advisory Committee. They looked at all the various different alternatives and they landed on this because. And I don't think that discussion's happened.
Right, well, that's why I was slowing us down and saying we should maybe,
And
Kick this
yeah,
around a
and again,
little bit.
I think I personally was waiting for input from Reed. And before I made any kind of judgment as to, just knowing how onerous that was going to be for building.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm not in favor of it. And it wasn't in the legislation from, as I said, that we had looked at.
okay, so it was a suggestion by the town
Yeah.
attorney.
It was a
that-
suggestion, but I agree with Andrew in that I think that we should eliminate it or somehow reword it before it goes to the public and before probably it goes to town board session tomorrow. So, and that was going to be part of my presentation, was we want to take this out. We also had another comment from a subcommittee member that the fine was very extravagant. It was too much money. I think it was $1,000 a day. Again, I don't have that material in front of me right now. Whatever it is, it seemed like a lot, and the objective is to educate homeowners, not to put a fiscal price tag, or put a price tag on violations. We're not trying to collect money, we're just trying to educate. That's the principal, thrust behind this whole campaign, if you will. So that was another suggestion that I was going to make to the town board when we went through the work session tomorrow, which I'm not really sure what that is going to entail, but that's part of the discussion I was going to hope to.
So there's like baby and there's bathwater, right? So I do like the idea that people test to see whether they actually need to apply fertilizers. I do like the idea of requiring in some sense, maybe not as a nanny state, but
That's in the brochure. That's in the brochure, that testing, and we have contractors here today that will establish and verify that that's what they do. They test before they apply any kind of fertilizer to the property. So we're really leaving the burden of that to the landscapers that are doing the application.
Well, we have a landscaper.
That's right, we have
Here today.
We have two of them here today.
Yeah, but yeah, maybe you have a thought, you want to?
So, yeah, it's not necessarily true that we test all the time for the basis of nitrogen usage. Okay, there's a lot of other things that can be tested for that allow the plant to absorb nitrogen. This whole thing is very complex. I pulled out of the Nantucket law, the A&L lab test. And the A&L lab test as their sample for Nantucket recommends 3 pounds of nitrogen per year, which is way more than is the ongoing practice in the landscaping community on Long Island at this point. That's an older number that a lot of labs, A&L labs has a place in Portland, Oregon. They have one in Virginia, and they're still using that boilerplate. You should put 3 pounds of nitrogen a year now because that's the best thing for the turf grass. Well, it might not be the best thing for our environment. So testing can be really iffy. Where are you sending it? Who's making the recommendations? You know, and there's so many more things in a soil test besides just nitrogen. You know, what's your pH level? What's your cation exchange capacity? All these things that no one's going to even understand or know unless you're really into it. So I'm not so sure whether the building department or the homeowner or anybody, you know, that isn't really into it will be able to determine if they're doing the right thing or not.
I have a question. Do all the tests that you send out come back with recommendations?
They do.
Always.
Well, the labs that I have used, yes.
I see. So, and the recommendations vary depending on which lab does the test. And for instance, some lab may see
Correct.
X level of nitrogen as deficient, where another lab may say the same X level of nitrogen as sufficient.
Correct.
They have different policies on that.
Not different policies. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's policies. You know, there's one called Soil Food Web New York that takes into account a lot of other things that maybe your generic quick soil sample does not at a different lab. It's all different things.
So perhaps that's the angle for this committee or the town to work into the legislation, is remove the subjectivity of the recommendation and provide a standard or develop a standard for what is perhaps nitrogen deficient, so that there is no confusion. If you have a test that says you have this much, then you would be permitted to add more. If you have a test that says you have above that, then we would say there's no need. And is it possible to develop a set of standards like that for our?
Yeah, it's an element, yeah. It's an element that is going to continually need to be added to the soil because the plant uptake. So they're basing it on what they think the plant uptake is more than what's in the soil. So, you know, right now Suffolk County has something for all of this through their
But they do.
their course, correct, and they make a recommendation of how much nitrogen should be applied annually. It's between 1 pound and 1.5 pounds, and that's it. So it's already all out there. This has already been done.
Is that
in my
based off of
opinion.
the specific test that you took, or this is just general treatment procedures for a given year?
Correct.
So, okay, so it's not relevant to the site-specific soil conditions, then their recommendation for 1 pound or 3 pounds or whatever that is per year.
Correct. It's not site specific.
Right.
They're trying to reduce the amount of nitrogen, and the old rule of, hey, turf grass needs 3 pounds a year. Basically, that's one of the gists of the class when you go to it, is that that's not necessary for home lawn. You know, you're growing Yankee Stadium and you're growing in an artificial environment where you're watering and feeding, and that's it, basically.
Right.
You know, there's no way, it's all more of an artificial environment. Yeah, that's gonna give you the best turf, but it's not the best for Shelter Island, Long Island.
Right.
You know, for the reasons that we're here for.
Right.
So the testing is definitely problematic. I agree with you. So
I
it
use
should
the
be-
guidelines, I'm Eric Springer property, I use the guidelines from the county. I'm only allowed to fertilize, I only use about 1.5 pounds per season per lawn. Because I don't want to see it go into our water. If I have to get along good and green, I go natural, I use iron. Or I use lime. That's it, that's all I use. Because I'm more conscious about where our water is, because I'm efficient. I love fishing. And I'm more conscious about the water. I think the limit you're gonna have to set is something that everybody can live with. That's not gonna pollute our island. You know, Walter's saying that the 3 pounds per 1,000 square foot, or whatever it is, 3 pounds per year, that's too much. We should go with about 1.5 to 1.75 pounds a year. And that's something that's more not economic, more environmentally friendly for our island. But I'm a lifetime resident. My family go back many years here, and I still want to see this place survive.
Uh-huh.
You know,
So is
we
it
gotta
your-
be smart.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Eric. I didn't mean, I thought you're done.
We have to be smart about it.
Yes, and that's our
What
whole
we're trying, yeah.
endeavor right here.
Yeah.
is to be
If you go with the 3 pounds per year, you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot, because it's still gonna pollute the island. And that's how I feel about it, being honest, because I don't use them.
Well,
So
you
we-
and Walter seem to agree on the 3 pounds is too high.
Yeah, what Gardner's Bay does is they spoon feed. So they're basically trying to put down a little bit at a time and let the plant uptake it slowly a little bit at a time, which isn't really economically feasible for a homeowner. You're not gonna go there, you know, and pay that much attention to it. So you use a slower release product, use water insoluble nitrogen that microbes have to break down, get uptaken by the plant, and we think we're doing the most responsible thing for the environment.
Okay, so slow release, 1.5 pounds, this is 1.5 pounds per acre, is that the,
Per 1,000 square feet.
per 1,000 square feet, okay?
I just wanted to raise an issue, which is something that came up at our last meeting and related to what Andrew commented about regarding permission or approval or testing. And that really had to do with individual homeowners wanting to put one bag or whatever it was on their lawn themselves without using a landscaper. It just seems to me that what we're talking about here really needs to be promulgated in such a way that there's no mistaking that if you go and buy fertilizer at a Home Depot, bring it back, that you are subject to these rules. Otherwise, we're still in the process. It's one bag at a time, boosting the nitrogen levels in our groundwater.
Right.
I don't know how to bridge that, how to contend with that. But it's an area that slips through the cracks, seems to me. And it is some, if we are going to go through this process of saying, this is the right way to treat the land, then that needs to be captured as well in whatever regulations are put forward.
Mhm. Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
So, Walter, what we're saying here is instead of using what I believe is still the Suffolk County rate in their law of how much of fertilizer to apply, we should use the amounts that you have, are trained in your Suffolk County or in your turf management course, which is lower, correct?
I think we were comparing Martha's Vineyard
It's all
to,
based on, you know, how much, I don't want to use the word you think you need. It's how much you're going to apply to achieve the results that you're looking for in a responsible way.
Right.
So it's about education. This whole thing is about education more than regulation. I
It
think
is.
that's why we're struggling so
Absolutely.
much. You know, I take as many classes as I can, I have as many licenses as I can, and I try to do the best I can. How do you get other people to do that? If we do that, then the regulation is a moot point.
You know, to that point, before I started using you, Walter, I would go to Long Island Cauliflower Growers Association in Riverhead and buy the stuff and just get my advice from the clerk there in the store. And then I would bring it back and I had my own applicator and I put out my own lime, et cetera, my own slow release fertilizer. But I had no idea what I was doing.
right.
And no idea.
Right.
Not everyone has a luxury of using, a licensed landscaper to maintain their property.
So it almost sounds like what you're suggesting is that maybe we want to have a course for homeowners available here on the island.
I think it needs to be in the educational brochure, which we want to distribute as much as possible. For example, I don't know how many people get fertilizer at the hardware store, but definitely we want to have a brochure there that goes out and in full view that goes out with fertilizer purchases. So I agree that education is the biggest component in this. And we, initially, the subcommittee, when we talked about it, as you remember, we were less inclined to look at it as the language in the code as a violation, but more an encouragement and more as sort of a baseline for, we have to have some teeth to our brochure. We have to have something in the brochure.
Here's where we are struggling, and so the idea is it does feel to me like there's a requirement that I put on my seatbelt, but there's nobody there checking. But I do it because we've changed. Our heads have changed over the years since the seatbelt laws went into effect. I didn't do it when I was a kid, and I do it now. And it just happens. So there's something to be said for saying you're required to do X, Y, and Z. I don't know if testing makes sense because it may be beyond people. Certainly limits, that are required that apply to individual homeowners. You're supposed to know that you're not supposed to use that big, huge bag. You want to use the smaller bag or whatever it is. So I'm okay with the idea of requirements that, people complain that there's no enforcement on Shelter Island, but in a way that's on purpose. It's not that you're trying to police them, it's that you're trying to develop a culture where we know we're not supposed to do this. We're required not to do this, even if nobody is watching, that we didn't put our seatbelt on.
And I think that was the impetus to make it, to make a larger violation cost and to put in the strong language that was put in. So if it's the committee's desire to remove that language and make it more accommodating and make it, put the onus on the homeowner and us to get the educational component out, then when I talk to the town board tomorrow, we'll strike it and we'll go back to our original proposed language, which.
I think that would be, it'd be very nice to be able to take a look and say, here is what the town attorney has generated, and what you and Tim had, and the subcommittee had, which I always thought a lot of really good, valuable stuff in what the subcommittee had put together that just vanished. So,
Okay, well, send me your ideas. If everybody wants me to send them the original
Why don't you
proposal
distribute the original
today, I'll do
proposal?
that.
And that would be.
that would be helpful, because you know what? Yeah, there are a couple of them in my inbox.
There are some few things. All right, so we'll go back to
Yeah,
the
let's
drawing
go
board.
back to that original one. Let's try to take a look at it. If you have comments, please funnel them through Lisa before tomorrow.
Right, and we,
Right.
we so wanted to do this before the moratorium ended. I think it's April 1st. But it looks like it may not be by that period. Moratorium meaning that there's supposed to be no fertilizer, according to Suffolk County, applied from November to.
So that's in place now, right?
It is in place now, but we wanted to
That
get
exists for-
this
for the-
going before that's.
The
moratorium
time starts, you can now put your fertilizer down, April 1st. They were hoping.
Well, having the brochure,
Right.
is feasible, I guess.
It may be that should we put the brochure out without the town code being modified? What do you think? Should we just put the brochure out and then redo it when it goes to law?
At this stage of the game, it seems to me that's about what our options are.
Okay,
To basically meet our deadline that we're trying to establish without getting into a lot of stuff that becomes controversial.
okay.
And in the brochure, I think it's easier to put down things that are like rule of thumb.
Yes, rule of thumb. stuff
And
like that.
you might even say, and the town is going to be promulgating regulations that
Yep.
require a certain level of, certain minimums or maximums.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, and I think that's something else that isn't in any language, and I'm not even sure it's in the brochure, and it should be because it would be helpful to homeowners that do make application themselves, is the 50% release. It should be at least 50% slow release fertilizers, correct?
Yeah.
Some towns, it's 100, it's like more than 50%, but we should be advocating for homeowners to use at least 50% slow release.
And you've got Walter on the.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
subcommittee,
I'll
you're-
tap into him,
so,
I'll
right.
give you a call. when we get into this.
Yeah, I would like to hear back from Walter after this conversation as to where you're coming from at this stage of the game.
Where I'm coming from for the.
Yeah, basically.
I think that we're duplicating something that's already in effect in Suffolk County.
Okay, that's good.
It might not be necessary, but.
In terms of
I-
regulation.
Yeah. When you go to get a Suffolk County Consumer Affairs license, you have to show them your certificate. So if you have a Suffolk County, I do not have a Suffolk County Consumer Affairs license, I just found this out. So I'm in the process of getting mine right now. And in my opinion, I think that would clean this whole thing up. When you go for your town license, because now we have to have a license to be a landscaper, we didn't have to have that in the past, so now we have that. If you want to apply pesticides, here's my DEC card, I have that. Here's my nitrogen certificate, but you don't even have to say that. Here's my consumer affairs license. I got insurance, I got everything. The building department doesn't have to do anything. Done.
Right, and that's nice.
Yeah, it's all one package in one bundle. The DEC enforces your pesticide laws, and then somebody complains, somebody calls up, hey, there's a guy next door, to me fertilizing, I'm not sure whether he's licensed. Building department, ties Suffolk County Consumer Affairs, they got a guy, does he have a license? Yeah, if he does or he doesn't.
What are your thoughts on a homeowner that knows nothing about this, goes to Home Depot and buys this 3-numbered stuff to come back and make his lawn gorgeous? That's all he wants to do. I know one of the things that we did in Silver Beach for many, many years is say ground is beautiful. We were encouraged people to do nothing except put lime on the lawns, basically. But I'd be interested to know something about that transition between the 3 numbers and what you're using in poundage and to a recommended for some rule of thumb, like 1.5 pounds per.
Right, so that was, again, but my main job as a landscaper, to be honest with you, on Shelter Island, is balancing expectations. Because we don't have water, we have deer, right? We have sandy soils. And for somebody to expect it to be, some unbelievable thing is very challenging. So managing expectations, brown is beautiful, or however you want to phrase it, is very big. And that comes through the education piece in the brochure.
Right.
And as far as homeowners, I actually don't know any homeowners that still apply on their own.
Oh, okay.
In other words, you're saying Doug is really the exception.
Was.
Was, not anymore.
Okay.
Yeah,
Not anymore.
I honestly don't.
DIY.
And if they do, I don't see it as a problem. Because there's just not that many people doing it. If I saw a ton of people doing it, I'd be like, wow, hey, this isn't right. But I don't see it.
But another very important component, and we spoke about this, that we haven't discussed here, is the fact that licensed, certified landscapers are one thing, but we have a group of unlicensed landscapers that are doing the work,
Do we?
that don't have the knowledge and the technical expertise that you and others do. Though that segment of service people are what we're trying to sort of,
Encourage.
well,
They- they-
encourage, but also advise homeowners against using.
Right.
Because they don't have the expertise about applying fertilizer. So they may apply
So that's.
30,000, whatever.
So that triggered Doug.
If I could just observe that the people you're referring to are usually working on weekends?
Not
Often,
necessarily.
and the reason they're being used is because they're very inexpensive.
Of course.
They don't have a town
Yes.
license to practice landscaping.
Doesn't
That's
appear to
right.
be.
Yeah.
I don't know how you reach those folks.
Well, that would be part of the educational component, putting it in a brochure. Please use licensed, certified, I guess we should say, landscapers.
Well, is there anything illegal about using an unlicensed landscaper?
Not right now.
It's legal. Yeah, go ahead.
2 years ago, I think it was, Walt, the town made all of us get licenses, contractor licenses. If you're gonna mow lawns, contractor license. If you're gonna go work on anybody's property, contractor license. The only ones that I know that don't have to get a contractor's license in this town are painters.
So you're thinking that there is a requirement somewhere?
There is a requirement.
There is,
I'm a
yeah.
landscaper and I have a Shelter Island contractor's license that I pay for every year so that I can run my business in the town of Shelter Island.
So Lisa, this belongs in the brochure.
There's no mechanism to enforce it.
Okay, 2 things. Enforcement. Who's going around checking? No one. We don't have
But
enforcement.
remember the
Nothing wrong with my
seatbelts.
business.
If you say in a brochure, you are required to use a licensed
Right.
landscaper, then the neighbor who says, I don't know if the guy next door is using a licensed or not, and all that's, there's actually some requirements in place so that people should know about.
We're a town committee.
Mhm.
I didn't know where to find out
Right.
about the landscaper license. I was told by the landscapers that it's in the town code. I had to search in the town code, and that's a whole nother issue.
But that's why
You found it?
in the brochure.
Never found it.
It needs to be in the brochure, but I think what I'm saying is that it's difficult for a homeowner to look through and say, is there any legal reason why I can't use these guys? If there is, I don't know where it is. So-
It's fascinating listening to this, because I know nothing about this.
Right.
All right. And so my initial concern was Doug's, because I've gone to the hardware store,
Gotten some fertilizer.
just like I try to fix some plumbing.
Right.
Okay. I don't know what I'm doing, but I try. Okay. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not.
Right.
We hear from Walter that actually there are not a lot of people who do that.
And I would bet that you haven't done it regularly all the time, right? Just once you did it, right? Yeah.
Okay, so Walter's saying there are not a lot of people who do that. Most people hire somebody.
Right.
Then the problem becomes a lot of the people who are being hired don't have the licenses, which like you guys went out and got. All right, so they haven't had the
And we're
training,
required to get.
are required to get. So here's a policy option. I'm not saying I am endorsing it. It's a policy option.
Mhm.
We put the liability on the homeowner for using a licensed contractor. And at the same time, we do what we need to do to get those people who are out working on weekends, the requisite training and the licenses.
Mhm.
Those two prongs.
Mhm.
Because we really don't have to worry about Andrew Chapman or Doug going down to Ace Hardware and doing themselves, because there's not much of that.
We're worrying about between Walter and.
I'm not worried about it.
Swingers And Walter.
And so I don't know if that's,
Individual.
I'm just suggesting it.
Can I say, Andrew, when we originally started this conversation, we began it by thinking about offering a turf management course through the town. And inviting, putting it out there so even the unlicensed people who may not even know that they need this had an ability to come to a local educational workshop in English and Spanish. That was one of the original things that we wanted to do. Then that sort of got turned around and mixed up, and we started talking subcommittee and said, well, there's already a course you can take online through Cornell Cooperative, this turf management course. So that kind of got dropped because the logistics of doing something locally for landscapers, and how do you get them? Because maybe they're from, Roslyn, I don't know.
All right, but that's prong 2 of what Andrew was saying.
Yeah, prong 1 is put it on Andrew and Doug that if we're going to use somebody to,
They have to have a license.
they have to have a license. And if they don't have a license, I got to pay the fine.
Can I answer this very briefly? I won't take up.
Please.
That was one of Stephen's reasons for making the violation so high. Because he in discussion, what I got from him was that if that type of $1,000 fine, the onus is on the homeowner, because that's what it says in the regulation right now, and the landscaper, both. If that kind of fine is high enough, maybe the homeowner will take note and make sure that they hire a
And pay
certified
attention.
landscaper. Maybe they will. So
Maybe
that's
get
why
their
it
attention.
was so high.
Okay, but the height is not the issue. So what we're talking about is what it is we're fining for. And what we were saying was they have to do a test and have the building department approve the test. And now we're saying, no,
Simply.
they need to have a licensed landscaper if they can use a
Period.
landscaper. And that's what the fine is for, not doing.
And that was our original
All
proposal.
right, well, I think you have more now to go to the board with, now.
Well, okay, so now I'm going to make
Go
a
ahead.
process question. We are having, I think, one of our early conversations about the policy options right now. So is this ready to go to the town board? Or should, because we're going to get we can't get this all done by April 1st anyway. That train's left the station.
Right.
So we can get the brochure done, okay? And then should we take more time to think through these policy options so that when we go to the town board, this is what we're recommending and this is what else we considered, and here's our reasoning for what we're recommending. And there's real kind of definition and logic behind all that.
Andrew, as usual, I feel like you speak a lot of wisdom, but intriguingly, 75% of the board is sitting in the room right now.
See, I don't even know.
So I think we might be able to get some feedback on whether, like, is bringing this to the board tomorrow too soon? Does the board want to process this a little bit? Do you guys want us to be processing it more?
It's too early.
It's too soon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really needs to, I said it last month at the meeting, I really think one of the things that needs to go past the building department. They have to look at it, whatever it is.
Well, they've been
They're
given
gonna be
it.
charged with enforcing it.
No, we're scratching that part.
Well, the idea is that the building department is let off the hook here, but you're still right in saying that we don't have it, this is not like ready for prime
I
time.
don't think it's ready for prime time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, Meg, do you have a feeling about?
So just going back to the original intention of creating this, is that there is nothing in our code that outlines for the public how fertilizers are supposed to be used on the island. So my understanding was the original intention of doing this was to let people know what the basic guidelines of fertilizer use are in Suffolk County and therefore on Shelter Island. So in many ways, it's meant to just be informational for the homeowner so they understand the parameters that they're supposed to work within. Not necessarily regulatory for the contractors because they're regulated by Suffolk County and they are certified and educated and licensed through the county. And when we get their license, their contractor license, and they can demonstrate that they have their county license and their DEC permit, then we know that they're certified. So I feel like this legislation can be very basic and sort of minimalistic in the sense that its intention is just to educate the homeowner on the guidelines, not necessarily to punish people for trying to grow a green lawn, but maybe to tell them where to go for more information. And I think really the key here is the educational portion of this. The goal is really to educate the public and let them know these are the resources you have available. This is what we recommend when it comes to treating your lawn. This is, how Shelter Island's a little different from other places. Everyone's pretty close to a wetlands, make sure you're 100 feet away. Basic education, I think, was really the intention of the legislation. So, I think a lot of the education can happen without the legislation ever going into effect because a lot of it is county regulated. But I do think it's good to have it on the books to let people know, hey, November to April, don't do it. Stay 100 feet from the wetlands. Don't spread on impervious surfaces. All of these things I think are very important. I think having the building department try to issue permits for homeowners themselves to apply is going to be a hot mess and unenforceable. So I don't know that that's practical. So I don't know if there's even necessarily like a penalty portion here. I would say it would be more for disposal of fertilizers not used. If you're just dumping bags to get somewhere to get rid of it would be a problem. But I think that's really the portion that we kind of need to look at is the penalties and the prohibitions. Although I think some of what we have as regulation on the use and application could be moved into prohibitions. Don't spread it within 100 feet of a wetlands. Don't spread it on impervious surfaces. Kind of those kind of things. So we can look at it again tomorrow, but I think simple is probably better.
Right, so the original proposal, that's what I'll come with, because we have the
Trying to tell people
original.
how much they're allowed to use on the property doesn't make any sense whatsoever because everybody has different soil and different conditions and different size properties, and I think that's a mistake in making.
So if we bring the original, and then we bring the one that was submitted by the town attorney, and give it to you and say, okay, which of these do you want to enforce, or do you think it's necessary to put on the books? And again, I contend that you just can't find anything that pertains to this in the town code.
Correct. You're really-
And that's the whole objective, was put something somewhere where people can get any kind of information, guidance. Even though, as you say, in many ways, it repeats the Suffolk County.
That's okay,
It's fine.
but it's in our code.
Well,
And the New York State
yeah,
runoff
and
law.
also with something came out, which was that homeowners are already required to use licensed landscapers. That's
They
already.
don't know that.
Well, but that brings us again back to the educational component, which
Yeah.
is the brochure. So what we're saying is that we've got the code already for at least that much. And whether you want to propose a policy that enforces a penalty for not doing so, we may not be quite ready for that tomorrow. Yeah, Andrew. No, you know, pause on, okay. So
I will say.
Yeah.
I'm leery
Mhm.
about this going to, quote, our governing board. We work for the town board.
Mhm.
I'm leery about this going to our governing board when I'm not sure we've landed
on the ideal,
on on a really clear recommendation. If I were in a company
Mhm.
and I were recommending this to the CEO
Mhm.
as a, in some division,
Mhm.
I wouldn't feel ready to do that yet.
Okay. So is this a question?
Because we're kind of going back and forth between education, regulation, which there's a gulf between those two things in terms of effectiveness and enforcement. And we've kind of toyed around with penalizing the homeowner to try and to ensure that licensed landscapers only do this. We're kind of toying around with different ways to do that, but we haven't quite landed on anything yet. So,
So both you and Al both have expressed the kind of not ready for prime time.
and look, it's a process. I'm making a process point.
Mhm.
I'm not making an outcome point.
Mhm. Mhm. So again, in terms of process, I'm not sure if this involves tomorrow's agenda I'm not sure whether there's a way to kind of keep it simple, stupid and create it's a small discussion item and then move along, but we're still in process, maybe as part of the discussion.
We could go to the town board and say, here's the education element of it. And we haven't finished our work on the regulatory element of it. Stop there.
I
We
mean,
could
the
do
other-
that.
The other thing you could do is be like, these are the issues that we're having trouble with. Is there a direction that you think would be most appropriate for us to go in? And then work on it from there too. So, it can come as just an open discussion. This is where we were, this is where we are now, this is what we're struggling with. Do you have any recommendations?
And Lisa,
I like that choice. I think
and
that's a good
you're
choice.
you're going to be at the board meeting and present, you'll do that on our behalf.
Yep.
Okay, so I think we have consensus as a group. Okay.
That's true.
Okay, so now I'm just going to apologize because I was looking at the minutes, not the agenda, when I was looking at the order of things, which is why I got confused, but that's okay. So we skipped over, number 4 really was the center triangle septic contamination test results mailing, which I think we're further, we're okay to move along, I think we're much further along than we have been. Joe, did you want to sort of tell us where we're at now?
We've got closing feedback from the town board, and we've come to a consensus on the graphics, the language and the letter. So we're really just now at the mechanics of the distribution. I spoke with the previous Water Advisory Committee clerk about how we did this last time. They have all of the mailing addresses from the initial mailing, and so we're just going to duplicate that again. So it's simply a matter of printing, stuffing envelopes, and putting postage on. We have all of the content that we need now. That's been finalized, so I imagine we'll start on this maybe this week. The intention of mailing the letter, by next week.
Is is there any issue with just hands and bodies to stuff envelopes and?
Well, there are,
I mean, it's great to be at the mechanics of doing this.
yes, any interest would be great if there's a time, if it makes sense to set a time to
Have a little,
have a little volunteer session of folding and stuffing, then that'd be great.
so I see some nodding of heads.
Sure, yeah.
You would be, I mean, who would, I mean, that's what we're,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry?
I'm leaving tomorrow.
Oh, you're out of town, so you can't, okay, but Doug, you were saying you would be able to, Ken, were you saying?
I can do that,
You
yeah.
would like to be?
No, I have a question. Is it coming from the town board now or from us?
It's coming from the town board collectively.
And was there a lot of changes from what we may have forwarded?
No, not many.
Not a
changes
lot
at
of
all.
changes.
No.
About 300? How many envelopes?
You know, yeah, it's about 300 and something, yeah. It's under 400, the initial mailing.
My question was, is that, I guess, has anybody seen the thing that it's
So do
not
we have
going
a-
out,
Yeah, we have a-
it's not going out under our name. However, I think that,
We should see the final draft, just
yeah,
to
it
see it.
seems like a,
Yeah, sure, I'll distribute, it. It's the same draft that was discussed at the town board level, so that document was
It's
available.
been posted, it's been public.
We got that.
Oh, well,
You sent it to us.
yeah, you should have it, so there really aren't any material changes, yeah. I can't recall the last exact version that
Very
went.
strong. It seemed like the board had come together on a pretty good statement that was, you know.
Yeah, that's exactly right, yeah.
One thing it did do was pull out high nitrate levels from high bacteria failures. So instead of having high nitrate and bacteria combined into one number, it broke it out. So you knew how many nitrates were over the limit, how many bacteria were over the limit.
Great.
So it broke that out a little bit more. And then when it talked about public water, it just explained that the town is looking into all
Right.
options. It didn't, state anything specific, like this is what we're doing, it just left it, letting people know that it's something that we're looking into, but it's not a done deal by any means.
Right, that's what I remember.
That's, it's really fantastic. I mean, I think we're at the third meeting since we started, so it's been 2 months since we got going on this. To be at the point of mechanics and stuffing the envelopes and moving forward, it's really just good work, everybody. All right, so we probably want to set a time and date or for a.
Yeah, I'll send an email to the committee and field some dates and times, and we should try and do that, this week or next week and close this out.
Which leads me to ask.
Yes, go ahead.
I have to go back to the library and find out what dates are available in April for public discussion, should enough public discussion be warranted, like if enough people want to talk about this.
Well, I think we
After the
did say that we wanted to have a public discussion
Oh, we
once people
definitely did.
receive this, right?
Yeah.
And we also, the one thing about the letter is that we were hoping that the public discussion
That's a
would
good
be
point.
referenced in
Yes.
the letter.
Yes, the last statement is actually inviting folks to a public discussion.
Fill in the blank when.
Yeah, exactly. So how did we leave off? It was going to be a library?
It was March. I got the dates from the library for March, so March is over.
Yeah.
So now I have to go back to that. I can do that when I leave here and just say, Jesse, what available Thursdays do you have in April?
Maybe May. I mean, what do you think? An opportunity for an outside session that people, warmer weather, or is
We
that?
did talk too about having Jason Heim or somebody from Suffolk County Health Department come and talk about the professional implications of nitrates, or rather the implications from high nitrates from a professional perspective outside of this town. So I know somebody talked to Jason.
Yeah, that's the next agenda
This is
item.
our next,
Well, then that would be part of the public meeting.
we'll,
Yes?
we'll go
Yeah,
to,
okay, super. All right, so Jason is going, we'll go to the next agenda. Jason is going to come and talk to this committee next month for the April meeting.
it'll be on a Monday.
Okay, so not the public.
But, so it's open to the public, but I think we should also have, in addition, like a library session similar to what we did in previous summers where we had picked a water topic. And
Yes.
this could be one, this testing effort would be one of the topics. So I would support both.
The reason that I thought, and maybe I was mistaken, that I thought we wanted Jason at this library meeting was because there might be questions from the public about, okay, so we know that blue baby syndrome is a result of high nitrate, but are there any other health implications? And so that individual might be able to address that. Now, I know from Suffolk County Health Department, Mary LaFleur said, she gave me information, it's only blue baby syndrome that the county stands behind as being the implicit health warning. Everything else.
It's also the reason the EPA set the standard.
Yes,
at 10 milligrams,
and
right?
but they get their directives from the state. So I'm not sure what Jason can contribute to that discussion, but, we know that there are other health studies done that implicate high nitrates in cancers. But, so that was my understanding, is that he would come and address that to the public and those people who have wells.
So what Joe was just saying was that he was saying maybe the warmer weather and maybe an outdoor event, and you're thinking sooner?
Sooner,
Because it's going out, people are gonna have that on their minds, that they got this letter. Okay.
So my thought on it is, let's say we fold all the envelope, we pack everything up, we mail it out next week. So it goes out next week. Give people a week, 2 weeks if their mail's getting forwarded to receive it, right? So that brings you to the middle of April. So I wouldn't schedule a library event until maybe the end of April or the early May. Because then at least you have people who are getting their mail forwarded, have a chance to receive it. We'll be able to put it in the newspaper, we'll be able to post it online, let people know.
And gets feedback too.
Right,
Or
and then you
ask
also
the
have Easter
questions.
holiday, then you have Passover coming up, so maybe try to,
Work around that a little
Yeah.
bit.
but I would
So-
give people a couple weeks to receive it, look at it, ask questions.
Okay, so there are only 2 or 3, like Thursday evening. If we want to keep the Thursday evening to have a regular WAC, tends to have these events on Thursday evenings at the library. There's 2 or 3 weeks that, you and the library might look at.
Right, well, it depends on what they've
And
scheduled
it's,
already.
it's going to depend largely on their schedule, but if, I would think that we all as a group could say, any one of those is good for us. Just find out from Jennifer, or is it Jessica? Jessica, find out from Jessica what really works for them, and let Joe know so that it can go get added into the letter before
The date.
printing, so we have the date in there.
Mhm.
And I think all of us will be good. I mean, if some of us may or may not be able to make given Thursday, but enough of us will be, I'll be available any Thursday, any of those Thursdays. So,
Like, for example, April the 25th is a Thursday night. That looks like a good date. It's right on the cusp of April, May.
Mhm.
So I could ask her
See if that works. And if
if
not,
that
the one
works.
before, the one after.
Well, probably after. I don't see any holidays. I don't see any conflicts.
Yeah, I would go either that week of April or the first week of May.
Right, May 2nd.
And we can, since we will have Jason here next month at our regularly scheduled meeting,
Check.
we can ask him if he will be willing to return and join us for the Thursday public session as well.
Or if he has some kind of recommendation, maybe somebody else.
Or somebody
in the
else,
department.
correct. Okay, Andrew?
Okay, I can't, my concern is that in my former life as a water supplier, if we were sent, and we're not, town is not a water supplier. If we sent out a letter like this, we would go to the call center. We would give the call center reps scripts, and they would have 15 or 20 anticipated questions.
Uh-huh.
And most of them would be around public health, and we would get calls. And we get them when when people
Right
read
after.
the letters.
And they opened the letter.
And so I'm concerned that if our timing is too long,
Right.
we could lose control over the messaging around the issue.
So you're advocating for an earlier.
Yeah, and if I'm just completely wrong, okay, better to be prepared than not. So that's my reaction.
Well, part
But
of,
I don't know the audience. You guys know the audience. Okay, I don't know the audience.
Well, I would just say that the messaging has more or less been conveyed to the participant already. They got their test result. This letter has all of the synopsis information, and we don't have a it's not to say we can't talk about this sort of, with lots of other contexts, but we don't have we're delivering a solution, we're not delivering a plan.
Right.
So it's not like there's any information absent what's already been,
So I'm worried about the people who live in the triangle who didn't get their water tested. The people who live in the triangle and got their water tested, they know their results. I don't know whether they know what their results mean. I don't know what they were told
right.
and how they were explained. If they were between 5 and 10, do they really know what that means? But they know their results. The people, their neighbor who didn't have their water tested, like the guy I ran into on the ferry about a week ago, lives in the triangle, didn't have his water tested, because I asked him, he's going to get the letter.
Right. Yeah, right. Everybody gets the letter.
Everybody gets the letter. So how's his household going to react? And so for him, he's going to say, whoa, he's going to look at where he is. He's going to see the pie charts or whatever, however the data is presented by zone. He's going to be concerned, and he's going to want to know what to do. And he's going to want, or somebody in his household is going to say, hey, deal with this. Or someone's going to, in the household is going to deal with it quickly. I don't think they're going to wait a month. Or I think a fair number of them won't wait a month. And so I'd go faster rather than slower.
I think I see your point. I'm just not sure what we're going to tell them in the public session that's not written in the letter. We're not presenting
Solutions.
we're not presenting a plan that's not been, conveyed. We don't have any really new information other than maybe a more broad discussion about the results. No.
I think the questions are going to come along the lines of, tell me about the health risks to me and my family at these different levels of concentration. So those questions are going to come. And the recommendation is to us, you need to get your water tested. And here's how to get your water tested. And then we'll go from there, because I just.
Well, and we've said you might want to consider filtration
Yeah.
or bottled water.
Yeah.
You might want to consider these things depending on how, your own personal situation and where you live exactly.
But somebody who's worried,
Mhm.
in a certain portion, some of the people who receive the letter probably will kind of dismiss it. Some of the people will be worried.
Quite worried, right.
Somebody who's worried is likely to want to start moving quickly. Okay, but you guys know the audience.
You made a really good point, that at least that I know I have not seen. When they got their results, what was told, what were they told at that point? I mean,
I got my
it seems like,
results. I got results. I mean, and I wasn't told a whole lot, but I was told that, first of all, my coliforms were not okay. I needed to have Gregor wells out. I needed to have chlorination done in my well. I also was told that I had over 7 milligrams of nitrogen, but I was not given context around what that could mean. I happen to know a fair amount about what the studies show, but
yes, you do.
Right. And, have, some
Which-
health concerns. So,
Which leads really to the importance of this follow-up meeting.
Mhm.
So that for those, and there may be only 3 or 4 people that are concerned, there's a forum for them to voice those concerns. And like Jason or somebody from the Suffolk County Community for the Health Department might be good, because they can address the testing part of it. They can say, okay, yes, if you want to get your water tested, this is what we can do for you. And then they also might address the health implications of it.
well, Lisa, I totally agree with you that Jason is a good idea.
I
Or
mean,
somebody
yeah.
somebody there. And so I don't want to lose that. I think we should move to the next agenda item to an extent, because of the fact that Jason is a part of that. But yeah, Greg and then Meg.
I think it would behoove us to have some understanding about what people have, when they've gotten their results.
They just get the results. That's all they get.
I would like to see what a letter looked like for somebody that had 10.5 milligrams and somebody that had 7 and somebody that had 2. Scratch out the names so you know what it
I'll
is.
answer your question.
The letter was same for everybody. So what it did was it just explained how you read your report, and the water report that everyone got is the same water report that's standard across the board. So whenever you get your water tested, you get a
Boilerplate.
Boilerplate cover letter and a second.
the contaminants they tested for, a list of where your contaminant level was, and a list of the standard that you can't, go beyond. And that's it. They were given that, and they were given a description on how to read it. So this is what this column means, this is what that column means. If you have questions, call the person who did the water test, they can help explain it to you. That was the letter everybody got. Nobody got a letter saying, hey, you're between 0 and 5, you're looking cool, you're between 5 and 10, you're over 10. Nobody got that, okay? So it was really just like, this is what a water test is, this is how you read the paper.
I'd like to make a request that we all get a copy of whatever the generic piece is, because everybody is not getting the same generic, all companies.
These are the
Yeah.
same, it's the same
I've never-
boilerplate of the test results that I sent you from the town. It's the same from the laboratory and from the testing agency. But
That's just numbers. That's just an
I-
Excel
no,
sheet.
I-
Is there a Word or a
Greg, I
PDF
sent you-
file in
Greg, I
there?
sent you
Why
all of
will
the-
you not hand it out?
I gave them.
Is there some problem here?
Greg, I'm saying that I sent you examples of these just a week or two ago, and it's the same kind of testing. It comes from the same testing agency and it comes from the same lab, and they send the same boilerplate front page and response page with the data. And Peter has one here.
I know, I received it signed.
Look, I'm sorry I
All right, well,
took us down this path.
No,
No, no, no.
It's a good path.
My recommendation is to do this sooner rather than later.
You made two recommendations, or you made two comments. One is to do it sooner rather than later. The other was to be ready for the questions.
Right.
So I think this is a starting gun. We go home, we keep emailing each other because we should be talking through, well, what is the call center script, so to speak, for this library meeting that's coming up? We should pretty much have a PowerPoint ready for this library meeting. So therefore, we have work to do. We have homework to do.
Did you not submit a PowerPoint?
Pardon?
Oh, yeah, you were
not create a
beginning.
PowerPoint
You
for this
started a
meeting?
PowerPoint.
Well, that was a Word document of what the topics that would be valuable
That I
to
was
look
going
at.
to make into
To
a
a
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So do you want to modify that and I will do the PowerPoint based on this
We
discussion?
could maybe do it together, would be fine, maybe.
Well, and circulate so that, the
Yeah.
group should be, people should be invited in to.
Are you comfortable with that information that you were working on?
The topics.
Yeah, pretty much, I think. Now, whether it had covered everything that's needed, I don't know. This is,
My concern
this
was that
is,
it covered too
this is the
much.
first, huh?
My concern was that it was like overwhelming amount for a library session.
Well, that's
So
the
we,
thing about,
so we just wanted, I would just advise everybody
Simple.
working on this to try to really, what's the most important thing within this? Because people get exhausted, the library will, for an hour and a half is the most you're gonna get, and that, we could talk 3 or 4 hours for what was there.
I think it was about, was it maybe 30 pages, 30 slides, which,
It's too much.
for an hour and a half.
It's too much, you gotta.
Too much.
Bring it down.
And
Really?
It's a little heavy.
Much, people
It's a little
die.
heavy.
Right, yeah, May.
Just to talk to Andrew's concern about people getting very upset and not knowing where to go. When they get the letter, it's gonna have the town board as the sender. So if someone is concerned or they want more information, they'll call town hall and we will hook them up with Joe Fenora right here to help answer their questions.
And be.
So, we'll take
You weren't
that
doing anything,
information
right?
and,
A little script.
we'll do the best to answer whatever concerns they have or to send them to people who can better answer their questions. So, if we do get people who are really upset, we will talk to them. We won't just blow them off and be like, nah, go to the library, it's cool. No, we'll take care of it.
Okay, can we set a date for the library event?
So, well, then Lisa's
Not
got
yet.
that.
I
Lisa's going to-
just emailed Jessica and she will get back to me to let me know what their availability is. That's really the first point. And two, what
Then we'll
Meg
print.
was saying, by the
And
time
that
the
goes to the
letter,
letter.
Then we'll print the letter after we have the.
then the letter goes out, as she said, and I think you have to take what she said with a lot of consideration, which is that some people, mail gets forwarded. They might want to be part of this discussion. Give them time to receive the letter, assimilate it, and then schedule it. I mean, I know for me, my week is like, I'm scheduled out a week ahead. So I think that I understand your concern about wanting to do it very timely so people don't lose the thread.
So we're not a
but-
water company, so
I
we
know,
don't have a call
I
center.
know.
Right. Okay, but, so we're not really leaving this topic behind. Finally, we can get to, so we've been focusing for a long time on the center. And we've got a lot of people at this table, a lot of people online who live near shore. And I would like us finally to make that pivot to, these things are connected. The near shore and the center both have to be taken into account. So Joe had a conversation with Jason Hine, actually,
Yeah.
of the Suffolk County Health Department.
Yeah, so taking the feedback from the committee and the public over the last few meetings about the need and the desire to do more testing outside of the center. Yeah, I had expressed concern about the complexity in how many components we would need to look at it. It's not as simple as just looking at chlorides. So recognizing some of the challenges with that, and also hearing from the public a need or a want and a desire to speak to more experts on the public health component of this. It seemed like Suffolk County Health Department was the appropriate agency to engage. They have resources for testing. They have expert, public health sanitarians on staff. And we generally have a pretty strong relationship with them anyway, as a municipality. So I connected with Jason Hine. He's the principal engineer for the Bureau of Drinking Water. And he's more than happy to come and speak about our effort. I had been briefing him on our center testing effort throughout the process, so he was familiar with what we had performed thus far. And he's going to come in at next month's WAC meeting to talk generally about drinking water concerns on the island, talk more about his role and the agency's role, but he's somewhat flexible on what he's going to speak about. So we have the opportunity, I think, in advance to help guide that conversation. He sent a few bullet points to me. I think I distributed those to the committee for feedback initially. And secondly, and perhaps most importantly, he's extended an invitation to collaborate with the health department on an expanded testing effort to the, I don't know what we're going to call it yet, the near shore, the peninsula, outer lying areas where we had a hope to do, a chloride testing program. And his recommendation was to use the health department's $100 comprehensive testing panel in a collective way, where they could help coordinate the sort of mass collection effort. They could potentially provide us with some analysis effort on the back end. And financially, the town could do the same process we did for the center testing, where we paid for the test, but this would cut costs dramatically, and it would grossly expand what we're testing for. So in the center effort, we looked at 4 things. And I forget what the test cost per unit.
About $82.
Right. So for $100 now, we'll get 200 plus components. We'll get more or less a potability, a full panel potability test
Very good.
provided by, their laboratory. And we can discuss, at committee level and also at the town board level, will we use WQI funds for that or something like that? But that's effectively what he offered to us was, hey, we've got these testing resources. It's going to take a little bit longer to pull off because of the scale. There's likely going to be more participants in this. But I think this is the best path forward if we want to pursue additional testing. It helps consolidate expertise, and this is the regulating agency that ultimately oversees our, water quality in the first place. So we're using their lab. We can work with their experts on.
Because collection is a big issue, basically being able to go from town to town.
Yeah,
The other
exactly.
part of collection is with this type of a test, depending on what kind of filtration systems you have, you might have an unfiltered water test, basically, pure from the, right, from that, depends on what you want to.
These would, these would only be
Only
unfiltered.
unfiltered
Yeah, raw
Yeah, that's-
water, basically.
Yeah.
You need to know what the source water is comprised of.
Yeah, and that's what we did for the center also. It had to be a
That would
raw.
be simple then, just that one test.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he's going to talk
Simpler.
more about that, at next month. And, it would be my recommendation that we absolutely take advantage of this, hash out the details, on how we would execute. But this would allow us to do a test that could deliver meaningful results and come with the expertise to break it down after the fact.
They write a good letter. The other would be whether or not, would be the timing of the results. Typically, it's, about a year. If they could do it a little sooner, that would be.
Yeah, so I asked about that, his response was that, it has been a bit of a lag at periods, but right now they're typically at about 3 months to deliver the results.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
But he stressed that the time would be mostly absorbed by the
Election.
administration. Yeah, exactly. So scheduling all of those, coordinating them so that they can all be done, that is time consuming.
Mhm.
Doing the tests themselves doesn't seem like it would be an issue. And I had a similar response. If this process takes 9 months or a year, will we lose the interest of everybody? But then I reflected on where we are with the center program. And, here we are now sending out the final letter. It's nearly 9 months and about a year since we actually had this initial discussion. So that timeline doesn't seem unreasonable given the scale with which the second phase would be. And it really is the only, I think, cost-effective way to do this.
We're also telling people, you should test your water. We're actually saying you should do this $100 test, and now we're saying,
We'll do it.
we'll do it, you just sign up. Now, there is, I think, not a fly in the ointment, but something that you didn't bring up that I know that we need to work through, which is what the testing that we did for the center was anonymized.
Yes.
And we're concerned about having the data.
Yeah. So I explained what we had done and for the center testing, how, we lumped it into zones and there was a layer of separation between the individual's test result and the town. And he indicated that that's how this would work, again, in a slightly different fashion, but that the street number essentially gets removed and the results are sent to the individual, regardless of who's paying for it. Now,
So the confidentiality is maintained.
correct.
That doesn't do us a lot of good.
Well, wait a second. So
reality.
the street number is removed, but not the street?
Yeah, historically, that's been how they hand off the data to us. So if we file for a FOIL of all the test results on Shelter Island.
There's Long Avenue, a lot of different kind of ones.
So some street, right. So long story short, I explained what we had done by zone and, this was one of the details that could be worked out, how they would deliver these results. I still think it's important that the homeowner has the, confidence that,
Area would
it's
be
not.
better.
Oh, right.
I think that we could do an area kind of a thing, be
Yeah.
much more meaningful, because there are very low areas and they're all basically contiguous and you have the same issue, and there are very high areas, or
Yeah.
not very.
So because this is a larger scale, we have the opportunity to do this by neighborhood. Where the collection effort, in the next 2 weeks is in Montclair. And so the street address doesn't really matter
That's
because it's the whole neighborhood.
Is that peninsula?
Yeah,
So can we
part
just
of
go
the
back?
peninsula.
I think I messed up.
Go ahead.
The $100 per test, right? That's the financial burden.
That's the cost of
The
the.
town's not going to, is the town assuming that, or are we asking the homeowner to take on it? Because if the
That's up
homeowner
to
takes
us.
on it, takes it on,
Town board.
then the results have to go to them.
That's up to us. I think, to make it equitable, we make the same offer we did for the center. If you want to participate, the town paid for your $100 test and,
The town did do it for the $85 for the center.
Yep.
yeah, so, that's
I'm just
above my pay
clarifying.
grade to work out, but, that's, if we wanted to continue this effort, that.
Yeah, the results are going to come back with probably 50 elements, I forget how many.
It's over 200. Yeah, it's over 200.
Over 200.
But the point is that
Three pages.
we want the data.
Yep.
And if
So we want to pay for it,
covering the cost of that encourages more participation, then
right?
that's exactly what we should be doing.
Yeah, and participation is good from, a couple of layers. One,
But if the location is important for that data,
Yes.
if the location means something, if
Right.
you're trying to see a trend of what's happening in an area.
Right.
You know, if we could have 50 people that said, I'm willing for you to know my street number, and 50 people or 150 people that you don't have that information in terms of where they are, this data would be so much more information that you could analyze and say what's going on.
Perhaps, Greg, but what I'm concerned about is making sure that an entire community, a peninsular neighborhood, that we have this as much testing as possible, as broad a baseline of data as possible. And that's okay. I don't need to know it's number 6 Petticoat Lane. I need to know that it's in the community. And if I can encourage more participation, that gives a much more robust and statistically significant data set.
I totally agree with Doug. And also 6 Petticoat Lane gets the test result. So it's not that granular test gets lost. The homeowner or the individual gets all of the details. It's just the analysis looks at it on a more.
Right, and it really is just a question of how large or small you make your neighborhoods that you're going to anonymize within.
For sure.
Right?
I mean, simply talking about streets, if you lived on 114, that's a problem. But many streets are not that long.
Yeah.
So.
A block long, Cozy Lane.
Okay,
Well, yeah.
so.
Depends on the area.
Thank you, guys. Yes. So that we don't have to struggle too much with this. So next month, Jason's coming, we can really begin to dig into hashing out doing this correctly, getting the neighborhoods to the right size, that we get good analysis, making sure that we have the data and the homeowner has the data, and the homeowner has confidence that they're protected as well. And that, so I think we really, that's going to be the bulk of our day a month from now, Monday.
Can I suggest that when we get this data, now that we've already done this, that perhaps we have a system, a grid system already determined, so that when the data comes back, we can plug it in more readily into whether it's an area, however you want to break it down, in zones or grids. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well,
That can
for
be done
instance,
anywhere.
the center test was broken by watershed. So there was, reason behind the initial boundary outlay. And I think for those neighborhoods, they're probably all mostly in similar watersheds. So we could look how that, came out. But I think that concept is very appropriate.
Right.
Keeping it within your watershed is a very reasonable way to look at, your neighborhood and your groundwater conditions there.
Okay, we have 2 watersheds, right and left.
Right, yeah, exactly.
The issue I have is is this going to be machine readable at all? Or is this going to be electronic data that we can get to analyze? Or is this going to be sheets of paper?
The
3 sheets of paper?
200 results.
I mean, the results. I
Yeah,
mean,
do we
this
get
is
Excel out of the
This is
200
arduous
results?
when you're talking about this much
Do
data.
we-
A ton of data, yeah.
It's a good question.
Yeah, there's a good question for Jason. When we get data dumps from the health department, it's in Excel format. So somebody there, whether,
If it's scannable, you could scan it in and create an Excel spreadsheet out of it, that would be something.
yeah, they have this at some point in Excel. So whether that's a really bad job for, the intern who's taken all the paper, but they've delivered that to us electronically. And I don't see how we have to have it like that. There's really no way. No way around it.
So again, to be continued next, go ahead, Andrew.
So just following, can we actually think through how we're going to use the data so that the data comes to us with a degree of granularity so that how we want to use it is statistically significant? In other words, it strikes me that there is a data science perspective to this in terms of both the statistical, applying statistics to this around data confidence, and also the mechanics that need to be thought through.
The one thing I would just caution you is that the test is the test. It's what Suffolk County does.
Yes,
There, right.
understand that, but I'm thinking about it from the standpoint of the data, how granular it is, how much we know about the addresses, whether we do it by cell, whether we do it by street, so that we get results that we can actually use.
Mhm.
And
Makes
all of that
sense.
stuff is, it's been too long since I took statistics in college for me to kind of be intelligent about any of it. I just know that I recall that,
An incorrect statistical approach.
correct.
Okay, well taken, and let's think about who, who's good at this stuff that we can bring in and work with.
I would just say more broadly, we should be looking at potability. If we had to boil this down, we have to know, or we want to know from a policy perspective, where are the most number of people faced with potability challenges. We don't need to know at this level, whether one address has an iron problem and the other address has a manganese problem. That's not something that we can really impart change. That's something that the individual is going to benefit from knowing and they can address. But as a committee and as a township, determining what the next path is for water sourcing, potability is what's going to drive that. If we see neighborhoods with trending chlorides, widespread elevated chlorides compared to a few blocks away, those are, I think, the key takeaways. And, I don't know that we'll be able to time this specifically over, July or August. That would be the intention. But boiling it all down, that's where the value add is. And that benefits mostly from participation. The more participation you can get, the more clarity you'll have about potability.
And then it also informs communities at large.
Right.
What they as a community can do
And
with
what their
regards to
priorities
potable
are.
water. If they know what that whole area, the values and what some of the high levels are, then they can come together and
Right,
decide.
they have a shared interest all of a sudden, yeah.
Instead of just my well.
Exactly. So again, this is going to be very much continued. This is the bulk of our next meeting. I'm actually going to just describe 7 and 8 as both being new old business or new business. There are 2 documents we've done very well, but it's almost 3:30. And so we're just going to introduce 2 documents. And you guys should be looking at them and thinking about them. The first is that Meg has been working on the irrigation restrictions topic. And that, besides talking with Jason, I think we will be very much revisiting that after talking with Jason next month. So Meg, do you just want to mention, I think you
Sure.
distributed to everybody the document.
Yeah, I emailed everybody a link to a Word document version of our current irrigation legislation. And so it's something that I've been working on and off for a little while now. And I've added some new definitions, things like evapotranspiration-based controllers, things like weather-based controllers. So I've gone through and I've done some updates on that. I've also eliminated the grandfathered well-drawn irrigation by creating a requirement that they have to convert to cistern or abandon the system within 2 years. There's also some notes in here about, just a whole bunch of different, I've updated a whole bunch of different requirements to require evapotranspiration controllers or like weather.
Which we're required to require,
Which,
right?
yeah. And then there's also some notes about penalties and things like that. I also have in the margins, when you open it, there's also links to DEC, to Suffolk County, to a couple of the state legislations, things like that. So when it comes to exemptions, ag is exempted at the county and state level. They're regulated a little differently. So I have the link to that so you can see it. I have the link to the DEC where they do their Suffolk County well permits where they monitor the golf courses. There's also a link in there to the New York State Golf Courses Best Management Practices document, so you can see that. So, this is something I've been working on for a little while, and I've added a whole bunch of things to this document. So I figured I'd share it with all of you, because if you're gonna start talking about it, I've already done some of your legwork and just get and run with it.
Right. You referenced Leggett Brashear, the 2014 study again, which now I've been through 5 times. And I just do recommend we go back conceptually. That really gives you some big picture about the hydrology aspects of this from a
Excellent.
professional point of view. And I think that there are conceptual things that we're going to have to tackle, not today at 3:30, but so homework, one piece of homework. The other thing was that Matt Williamson, who did the graphics for the center system, had on his own done another graphic that you all have. And it's an interesting graphic. It basically is trying to draw your eye to where people either have septic systems less than 100 feet from their wells, or where we don't know,
That's right, a lot of those.
where we have blanks.
Mhm.
So this may, and I will share this with James Eklund and with the water quality and with Greg here, because he's representing the water quality improvement as well. This is, Matt's idea here was there are certain priorities we might want to be thinking about. And the WQIMM might want to also be thinking about. So again, I think it's a really valuable document. Matt couldn't join us today, but he has a standing
GIS, I
invitation.
would imagine, is what he went into
Yeah,
in
yeah.
order to.
And he has a standing invitation. He is an honorary,
I'd be interested, are these watershed zones that he's got here?
That's our center system.
Yeah.
That's our
That's what we
okay.
just did.
Just
That's what
confirming
Mag
that.
had drawn out as
Yep.
watersheds, yeah.
How extensive is the work product? Does it extend all across the island, or is it just in this frame of view?
We should talk with Matt about, and he talked with you, Meg, a little bit
This is
about,
island-wide.
this is, you can see it island-wide, and then you see the center system mapped on top of it. The center high nitrogen triangle mapped on top of the entire island. But yes, you have the dots and he's color-coded that information into this, and
A lot of
So-
well locations probably a little ambiguous, because these could be original well locations. Many people have maybe moved the well for some reason or another. The data is really, it's like on that in the septics, because I've been through this a couple times, and it's really difficult to make sense of the accuracy of what we're looking at there.
right, and actually, the one thing that, to his credit, he's doing here is showing us
Yes,
where we don't know
Mhm.
what's going on.
yes. And there's a
Which
lot.
becomes a priority for okay, we might want to think about how can we come to know that, so, all right. All right, it is,
Excellent.
yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
So at the last meeting, I raised as a new business matter the idea of regulating our existing septic tanks. And I've referenced my experience on the Connecticut shore, where in the town of Old Saybrook, you have to have them pumped every 5 years. And as part of that pumping by a licensed contractor, there's an inspection. And the inspection relates to the physical integrity of the unit, the design of the unit, whether there are baffles in it, whether the T's are in place, whether there's a distribution box, whether there is even a disposal field, or it's just a cesspool. So it's a probably a 30-item checklist. So if you have a septic tank in Old Saybrook, septic system in Old Saybrook, you do that every 5 years.
And we would know the blanks here.
And we'd be able to fill out data.
All right, so, and you need one in Clinton, you need one in Old Saybrook, you need one in Old Lyme, you need one in Essex, you need one in Deep River, you need one in Chester. That's the way they're managing the issue in that part of the Long Island Sound watershed. And everybody's used to it. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to avoid public sewers. Because they're saying if we have properly operating septics, we don't need, as a community, we don't need to spend the money on centralized sewage treatment and a collection system. Okay. Now I look at this map and I say to myself, wow, there are 1,366 wells with residences without mapped septics. Does that mean we don't really know where they are or how they're functioning or what have you?
I think that's the right way to interpret that information.
Probably.
And
needs
there
Bob knows
are
more about
a
it.
lot of, and there are another 178 lots with wells within 100 feet of mapped septics.
Correct.
And do we know how those septic tanks or those septic systems are functioning?
Or what direction?
The only thing we know really are
What's
the
flowing from
AI
them?
systems. The advanced
Correct.
systems are the ones that we.
Yeah. And there are a couple of hundred of them,
Well, that's what you got.
far fewer than there are septic tanks, septic systems. Okay, so the question that I'd like the committee to think about, in the same spirit that we went through the fertilizer discussion, is this lack of knowledge? Well, let me go back. What I understand is going on in Suffolk County is that anytime anyone gets their septic tank pumped, which of course is their decision,
Right.
the pumper has to log the information with the county. And that's how the county is building a database around existing systems. That's probably going to take some time. All right. So the question I have for the committee is, are we content with acquiring information about existing septic systems on that pace? Or do we want it more quickly than that? And then the liberal artist in me, the non-scientist in me, says, no, given our dependence on this aquifer, I want it more quickly than that. And then in my conversations with Joe about this, it's very much like, what kind of problem are we trying to solve? And what's our priority around this? And Joe points out, which is absolutely true, that if all these systems, these traditional septic systems, were operating perfectly, it wouldn't really make a dent on the nitrates problem.
It's history.
Because one, that a lot of it's history, and second of all, a well-functioning conventional septic system doesn't get rid of nitrates.
Takes you up to, what's the number?
70
or 80
yeah.
milligrams per liter?
Right.
So,
But there are variables, aren't there?
well,
I mean, it depends on the depth of your septic.
I don't know.
I don't know if it's that concrete.
I was tasked with going back and looking at Block Island. Al, you suggested that I look at Block Island. I did some research around how this is done in Rhode Island. I'm obviously familiar with Connecticut. I was tasked with doing some research around the regulatory and structure about traditional septic tank systems around in these nearshore zones, or in these communities that are adjacent to the shoreline. I've been doing that, but I think we need a broader discussion of this. I don't quite know how to structure it yet. Joe has some really valuable perspective on this. And I'd just like to ask, I'd like to, for all of us, connect this map to what I'm talking about around septic tank regulation. Keep those two thoughts in your head as you look at this map. And then ask for time at a future meeting to have the kind of policy discussion that we had, or like we had just had about fertilizer.
Yes, obviously, we have no resistance to having these kinds of policy discussions. Also, we get to 3:30 and we get exhausted, and we can't do it fast enough at an hour and a half per month. So I would really, continue to structure your challenge to us and your question to us. And you're welcome to feed it to me, to distribute to all of us, or to, it's okay to communicate with the group. But let's keep talking between meetings as we have been doing, because we need to in order to move quickly enough at these meetings. We need to get some of the groundwork done, some of the thinking done. So it's good to challenge us now, and it's good to keep challenging us in between meetings.
And can I just ask, and what, about the veracity of this?
So I was just gonna comment that I see at least 20 errors on this already, just looking over it, because it's not including IA systems. And a lot of the new IA systems that have been put in are not in our GIS database. So a lot of these orange unmapped septic systems have actually been upgraded. So a lot of the older systems that, would have fallen into this unmapped, unknown zone have since failed and are now upgraded to IA systems. So there is a major gap in our data, and I've actually been kind of working on this too. So I got a list from Mary Ellen of all the septic registries that she's received in the since we set up the program. And so I'm kind of going through and trying to put together a spreadsheet so we can give it to someone at GIS to to update. So there is a gap here. There's at
Yeah,
least.
and Matt was, this is
But this
completely a
is
volunteer
way smaller
effort.
from that.
Right.
That's a very good point, because the data that comes in today gets put in the file on a new advanced system, okay? Doesn't go anyplace else. No one touches the system that this data came from. And it's been years, I forget how many years since it's been updated.
Yeah,
So.
at least 3 or
this-
4.
Yeah, so this has kind of been a bugaboo of mine for a long time, this should be a repository. This GIS database it should be a repository for everything we do on the island.
Remember what we saw from Martha's
And a lot
Vineyard.
of other things, which makes the data much more usable and
Oh, sure.
we don't have anything like this. But one of the things that I find is the interesting thing about what you're trying to accomplish here is a longer term vision of septic versus AI, and how good is it that we have, and can we get by and not have public septic, in essence, is what you're really done. You're looking for like price performance or a benefits analysis of septic that we have it today versus advanced septic versus maybe something like a centralized septic system. And as you know, these septics that we have in there today, typical ones, not the advanced ones, have no way at all of dealing with the future. And we're dealing with the here and now on this. PFOSs, PFOAs, and all those nasty critters that are coming down the
You wind
line
up having to visit
from all
every
the
single
products that we're
system.
using today, those babies get by all this stuff. And so my contention is that we need to really get good data from if there is such a thing, it's a cost benefit analysis of one approach to another. We're talking 50 years. We're talking a long-term kind of an investment. And we're saying, should we invest in AI? Should we invest in cleaning up our septics? Should we invest in a public system? That's the essence of it. And is this a 50-year solution considering our water that we have under us today? Now, if we had a professional be able to kind of create that wouldn't be shot full of holes by a lot of people who really don't like the idea of anything like this. That's about the level of data that we're going to have to, or the analysis that we're going to have to have.
Right. Trust.
In my mind, anyhow.
So we have a thing going on here about public trust is like precious to us.
Very.
And that means that being accurate to what it is we do and don't know, being very, very clear about being as precise as we can about data and as accurate and, truthful and just forthcoming about that and really emphasizing the collection of data. Lets us know. So anyway, we've got a lot of good efforts that have already been taken and that we're continuing to take. So
Well, let me tell you, it starts simply with someone to update our files, basically keep the GIS system updated with a commitment from the town and the building department to do that. In essence, is really the first step that we need to have somebody there doing it.
Can I ask, Meg, is there anything that we can do with regards to the irrigation restrictions? like you say, you're sort of working on, you're
Oh, I sent
picking.
it to you so you guys can play with it.
Okay.
Go through, read it, make your recommendations, discuss it as a
Yeah,
group.
we just-
Yeah,
I'm sure you
I
will.
have, I have at least some thoughts to share.
I started it and I'm glad to hand it off to more brains because mine's tired.
Right,
So
right,
take it, run with it,
Okay.
have fun with it. You can't solve
So
it.
It's a good idea to have it in one place. I
Absolutely,
mean, as a
Yeah.
start.
yeah.
All right, before I call for a motion to adjourn or anything like that, I just wanted to ask if anybody online had wanted to comment or had anything that, to contribute or questions. Okay. All right, so no hands, no, that's not a hand.
Can I
Yeah.
make a very quick
Yeah,
recommendation?
Please.
I know we're going to talk to Jason, and that's going to encompass a lot of next month's meeting, but can we come together after having looked at what Meg is doing and come together and discuss that with our input?
Mhm.
It should be.
You know,
It
just
should be able to do
let's
that.
start putting
Get
stuff on the
that done
table.
with.
Well, yeah, and again,
Allocate time for that.
and again, I would encourage us as a committee to be talking like
Right.
tomorrow, next week, whatever, online as well about what we're seeing in there and what, just, trying to get our heads around the big picture conceptualization, where we're going with that.
When we stop envelopes, we could be chatting.
Get some donuts and some coffee, and we're good. All right.
Let us know.
All right,
that-
so,
yeah.
motion to adjourn. All right, all in favor?
Okay.
Okay.